majors, and he went to UNL Law, so we have like all the same faculty. Just about 30 years apart, but you know.
He's our interim. He's been
like
here for like 6 years. Yeah.
It tends to happen here quite a bit. As long as the work's getting done, it's like.
And he's got the personality.
Because they're using Apple.
What's that?
They had a Mac.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
It's like at football games with full teams, and get ready for kickoff, and you have to wait for the TV to
Yeah, wait for the media.
What's the holdup?
Yeah, when there's another game going into overtime.
Right.
Wait, we're putting 21 minutes on the road. So we, do we need this then?
So the video is not working, but the audio is. So they've got the PowerPoint with audio, so at least it's on.
Okay. So still use the mic.
Yeah.
Okay.
She said they just can't get the video to work. They have the audio with the PowerPoint.
Okay.
It still gets done.
Sure. But no mic in the room, so we're good.
Yeah.
I will be able to hear. Yeah. I just don't want that too close to yelling into the microphone.
Yeah. Usually, yeah. The answer when he does it's usually right down here, so where we have to switch around.
Yeah.
But we can get started.
Dim the lights a little.
Okay.
Yeah, if you want to. Do the quiet.
Yeah. You want him up? All right, never mind. We good? Okay. Yeah, we'll have to leave him on. Yep. Okay. Good afternoon. Thank you all for coming out today to talk with us about travel and the BRT process. My name is Laura Gonerman, Associate General Counsel and new chair of the BRT committee. With me this afternoon is Michael Christen from here at UNK, the vice chair of the BRT committee, and Jim Vogel, business manager from UNL. Give you guys just a brief history on the process from our perspective. This BRT was commissioned in January of 2017 by President Bounds to address some of the budget crisis concerns that we're going through right now to cover a $49 million budget deficit. So we were commissioned to find not only some cost savings for the university system as a whole, but also to find some efficiencies that are going to hopefully be real helpful to both staff and the faculty as they travel. So in that process, we looked at some technological advancements that we could make to find those efficiencies. And we looked at a couple different travel companies and settled on Concur. So we already have the Concur booking tool. You may have seen that through SAP. What this is the expense portion of Concur. So the goal is to have both a single portal where you'll be able to not only book your travel and your trips, airline, hotel, but also any expense that you have while you travel will also go through this system to streamline reimbursements and to automate quite a bit of that process. We consulted subject matter experts from UNL, UNK, UNMC, and UNO, as well as central administration. These are people that work with travel almost every day, and they have been very helpful in finding some ways that we can streamline this process. We also consulted some of our peer institutions and travel experts outside the university system that already have Concur to kind of get their experience and to help us through this process. So we started working on with this new technology in mind, we realized that we needed to have a streamlined policy across the university. So we used those same subject matter experts starting last fall to create this new travel policy that you hopefully all have had a chance to at least look at. And that is, not a complete overhaul of our travel system, but to make it a single policy. So if you're traveling out of UNK or you're traveling out of UNO, UNMC, the process is going to be the same. Your reimbursements are going to be the same. And that's really going to help us find some efficiencies and some cost savings across the university as a whole. So why are we here today? We are here to get feedback on this policy. So we realized that even though we had subject matter experts, we didn't address every scenario. So there's going to be things that we need your help to think about and to really refine in this policy. So unfortunately, we have a short and quick timeline, which I'll discuss a little bit later, but we do want your feedback. We want your input. If you have suggestions for us, we welcome those. We have an email address set up. It's travel@nebraska.edu, and I'll bring that up on the last slide when we're finished. Please send your feedback there, especially if it's a detailed comment. We are reviewing all of those, and we welcome that feedback. And then we're here today also to answer some questions that you all most likely have. So we have a brief presentation to give you a little bit more about Concur and to explain some of the things you might see that are different in this travel policy. And then we will open it up. The majority of time today we'll be here to answer your questions. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Jim Vogel to talk to you a little bit more about Concur.
The first question, I guess, next page. What is Concur? Concur is a leading provider of integrated travel and expense management company. They are using, this software is used by many of our peers in higher education for employee travel. It's one of the modules, the Concur booking tool we're currently using to purchase our airline tickets through Travel and Transport. The expense tool will help the university create a one-stop shop for our travelers. You'll be able to do your travel request, the approval for that travel request, the booking of your air, hotel, car rentals, and then any receipts that you have will all be scanned into the system, and then we'll build your reimbursement report. So it's just a one-stop shop for all your travel. It is a cloud-based software, meaning that you can go through this through your or through your computer or a laptop. If you have a smartphone, you can access it, and even a tablet, you can access your data. This allows for standardization and efficiencies that not only the traveler will be able to handle, but also the faculty or the staff in the back office. They will have access to this data. The policy is being developed with these capabilities in mind. So we're hoping that through workflow, we'll be able to help you be more efficient with your processes. The ease of the system is one of the greatest benefits for our travelers. We're hoping that it's simple to use and that you'll want to use it. The system also provides training, and if you travel guides. And so if you're an infrequent traveler, we can send out emails that will help you through the process. And now we'll show you a short little video of that process. I'll let you start.
I need to meet with a customer. Our lunch meeting is confirmed, and I've added Concur as an attendee for this meeting. More on that later. Now I need to book my flight. I'm going to arrive the evening of May 5th, the day before, to prepare for my customer meeting. I'm actually going to use my voice to search for the flights and tell Concur what I want to do. Flights from Seattle to San Francisco departing May 5th and returning May 6th. It's now coming back with flight options. There's the one I want. Got it. Now I want to book a hotel near our meeting site. And because my Concur profile is linked to my favorite hotels, I get lower rates, plus whatever else my company's negotiated. I go ahead and reserve my room directly on the hotel website. Again, I get not just my company's special rate, but in this case, free wireless and free breakfast. Thanks to the power of a connected ecosystem, I now have a single itinerary that includes the flight and the hotel. Now that I've booked my flight and hotel, we'll fast forward in time. The day of my business trip is here and it's time for me to head off to the airport. I'm going to take an Uber to the airport. Set pickup location. Excellent. My car will be here in 2 minutes. Now Concur is connected to Uber. What that means is when this ride is over, the receipt will automatically flow into my expense report. No paper, no transaction. Now that's effortless. And it showcases the power of the Concur ecosystem. Now I'm off to check in for my flight. Let's fast forward in time. It's the next day, and I'm having my business lunch with my customers. So I've just wrapped up my business meal, and when the bill comes, and because American Express is connected with Concur, I get an immediate alert letting me know how much has been charged and where. Now, because my company requires receipts for these type of transactions, I can just take a photo of it. Now, since I booked this meeting with Outlook and I forwarded it to Concur, as you saw earlier, I added Concur as an attendee to the meeting. Now, my expenses, when it automatically flows into Concur, will include matched attendees, the credit card transaction, and the paper receipt you just saw me take a photo of. The expense report really is writing itself. Before I head off to the airport, I'm going to grab a quick drink at Starbucks. To pay for my coffee, all I do is open the Starbucks app, hit pay, and because Starbucks is part of the Concur connected ecosystem, that receipt's going to show up automatically in my expense report. Now that I'm back home in Seattle in my office, here's the best part of the story, the thing that truly makes this a perfect trip. Because that expense report wrote itself throughout our journey, now I don't have to write it. All those expenses that automatically were integrated into Concur throughout our trip are all sitting right here. From that airfare, to the itemized hotel bill, the Uber ride, our Starbucks drink, even that lunch with the automatically integrated attendees. It's all here filled out for me. For me, the traveler, it's been effortless. And for my company, it's just as simple. For example, it's easy to get useful data. The CFO has visibility into which hotels are getting most of our business. That opens the door for procurement to negotiate better rates. Finance can quickly determine how key metrics are trending and take appropriate action. So thanks for taking the trip with me. I hope you found the travel and expense process painless, seamless, and best of all, simple.
So that's a little intro into what the Concur system has for us. All right, what the Concur system has for us and the ease that it can have for the traveler and the back-end offices as well. And like Laura stated a little earlier, the policy was developed with the capabilities of this program in mind. That has all been released and distributed among all the campuses, with the main changes kind of being highlighted. Some of the key pieces for today's presentation is we're going to go through some of those changes and maybe how they affect the campuses and what the exact meaning of those changes are. So one of the main changes for most of the campuses is that this will become a university-wide policy. So UNK, UNL, UNO, UNMC, as well as Central will all be following the same pieces, the same rules, and the same procedures with this. This is for multiple reasons. There's efficiencies for us among employees and how they're able to process their payments, process their reimbursements. But it's also a chance for us to make sure that every employee on every campus is treated in the same manner with what they're getting reimbursed for or how they're able to book flights and hotel rooms. But like we said earlier, it's also for the back end side with accounts payable. It's much easier for them to reimburse these expenses, to collect the data for these expenses throughout the process, and as well as make that quicker for you as an individual to get your personal reimbursements. Second piece is that all travel will be processed through this Concur and Expense tool. This is, again, another way for us to standardize the process and make some efficiencies with the same rules and approvals. But another big piece with this that we purchased with the Concur software is a risk management tool. And that actually allows us to track our employees wherever they may be throughout the United States as well as around the world for safety issues. If there's a natural disaster, political unrest, we're able to reach out to our employees and get them to safety or help them whenever they may need it. So that piece is linked directly into the Concur system, so your itinerary is uploaded to that risk management software piece as well. The next piece is that all pre-trip requests will be required to all bookings and expenses. Now this allows a little bit better management of the budgets that we see. Some of the pieces right now, you have to have your supervisor's approval. That will continue, but we're also adding a budget or funding source approval for all these expenses. So for deans and chairs, and as well as vice chancellors, it allows them to keep track of those funds a little easier, as well as make sure they know that their money that they budgeted out is being spent appropriately. Another piece is the 60-day limit after employees' last day of travel for expense reimbursements. Now this is actually a state law for Nebraska right now, but the Concur system just kind of helps us to really enforce that rule. In the past, it's been, it takes a while to get to AP and then to get to a payment. This allows us to expedite that process as well as have a direct cutoff since those receipts can be uploaded instantaneously. We'll have questions right at the end of the presentation. So, with this next piece is that air, hotel, and car rentals will all be booked and processed through Concur and Travel and Transport. This is a piece for us that's more of using our university contracts. We like to emphasize that there may be instances on a department level or a trip level where you see a little increase in a ticket or an increase in a certain hotel room. But overall, we're looking at the university-wide system. And being able to utilize our contracts, as they stated in the video, utilize some rate negotiations with those hotels if we're using them quite often, as well as utilizing those sources within Travel and Transport that we currently have with their safety and assistance pieces as well. And again, we understand that there's certain instances, especially in international travel, that some of these systems will not work. Travel and Transport just will not be efficient enough to meet those needs. And those are understandable, and we're working within the Concur system and our software building to make sure we can meet those international needs or minor exemptions that may be part of the policy. Another piece is that upgrades beyond the coach fare or main cabin will be the personal responsibility of the employee. This is something that we do commend all employees because the university as a whole does a fairly good job of making sure that we do choose the lowest fare or very close to it. But it goes back to that equal treatment of employees, that no matter who you are or what department you're a part of, you're going to have the same rules and regulations as far as upgrades go with any type of travel. Another piece is the lodging rates. The lodging rates will now be capped at the conference rates when applicable, or up to the per diem rate plus 50%. A simple example that we like to use, if you're traveling to Columbus, Ohio, and you have a per diem rate of $100 for lodging, the university would allow you to book a hotel up to $150, and that would be your cap for the expenses there. But we do like to emphasize that we are not capping conference rates. We understand that the proximity to those conferences and your colleagues and vendors or whoever it may be is important and vital to that conference, so we don't want to restrict those. Those will be able to be booked outside with the conference registration or through the conference travel agent, which some of them may have. So that's understandable, and we want to emphasize that we're not limiting that aspect of the lodging. The next piece is that we're allowing up to 3 meals a day with the total cost of these meals not exceeding the per diem rate for your destination. Now, this is not changing that we are actually going straight to per diem, but it is saying that we will reimburse actual expenses up to their per diem rate. And if an individual spends $60 on meals for a day and their per diem is $50, the university would reimburse them for $50, and the $10 extra would be their own personal responsibility. So one of the pieces with this is it's complying with the snack rule that the state has implemented, that the university and the state of Nebraska will not pay for employee snacks. So that's another piece here. In addition, meal allowances will also continue to be reduced from your meal allowance for the day, whether it's provided in the conference registration, within your hotel and lodging offerings, or any other registrations that there might be. Those are a few of the changes that we've kind of gone over. But for the most part, we do want to emphasize, besides those few changes that are in the policy, for the most part, there's a lot of similarities in these policies. There's certain things that we here at UNK are already following, certain policies that we may not, that other campuses are. The main piece that we did within this new university-wide policy is just really narrowing it down so we can all follow one piece and be treated as a whole university system that will allow us to use the Concur tool most efficiently. But like we said, the Concur tool, as you saw for the travel, is fairly easy. And we think the ease of this system and the efficiency and savings that we're going to see from it will outweigh those hassles that maybe the new policy may have on some of the employees. Like Laura said in her first slide there's a lot of the institutions, our peer institutions that we've looked to that have used this tool. And that's one of the reasons we're kind of looking into our travel office as well as some of these new policy pieces with the booking and expense tool for Concur. So one of those universities is the University of Colorado. And so this is more from the back end side, but just a way that they saw results with the Concur tool. So we just don't want you to take our word for it, but an intro to see how they have seen good results with the Concur piece.
My name is Sandy Hicks, and I am the Associate Vice President and Chief Procurement Officer at the University of Colorado. CU is somewhere that I want to be because every day is unique. We get to support really cool research like sending satellites up with NASA or helping to cure cancer. The University of Colorado budget system-wide is $3.5 billion. So out of that, the Procurement Service Center is responsible for just over $1 billion of that. And we are the second largest expense after payroll. And then after that, our actual travel spend is $35 million a year. We implemented Concur Expense back in 2010. And then after that, we brought a committee together that looked at Concur Travel. And they had 2 questions for us. When can we get it, and why didn't we implement it with Concur Expense? Our users are demanding online booking. They're demanding the mobile apps, streamlined processes, and they want things fast. We constantly measure employee satisfaction, and in our last survey, 84% of our users found that the changes we've made were very helpful to getting their job done. One of our innovations with Concur has been our infrequent traveler program. So out of our annual survey, we were analyzing the data, and some people were really happy with the systems and other people were struggling. We designed a program that when you book a trip, we're able to, through Concur, look up and see that you have not traveled in the last year. So then an email fires off to you that says, you know, we see you just booked a trip and we know you haven't traveled in a while. So we've gotten really good feedback on this really just-in-time training program, you know, that shows up when you need it. And I think that's really important to, once again, give people time back in their day to do what they're here to focus on, which is not travel and expense or procurement card reconciliation.
Okay, so as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, we do have some deadlines coming up that we will need feedback, and this has to do with our technical implementation and the amount of time that they need. And because these two pieces are so connected, we need to have this policy as close to final as possible for the time being so that we can get this implemented. So that's why we are requesting your feedback by February 2nd. I realize that's a quick turnaround, but hopefully the ways that you can give feedback are helpful and help everyone to meet that deadline. Our goal is to have both the Concur system fully operational and the new policy will go into place at the same time, July 1st, 2018, to correspond with the new fiscal year. We will have training sessions available for all of you as we get closer to this rollout. So we're planning on having both in-person as well as some web-based training. So you guys know how to use the system and you feel comfortable with it when it starts operating. We may also ask for some volunteers to kind of be a testing group in June. So again, the best way that you can give feedback is this website address. And you know, we do think that, you know, these changes are going to be good changes for all of you, that you'll be able to do your jobs easier, and you can focus more on your actual job than having to deal with, you know, receipts and booking hotels and airlines. So yeah, with that, I think that we'll open it up to some questions from all of you. Questions, feedback, pointers. Go ahead.
Yeah, my question is on that pre-trip travel. A lot of what I do is visiting with farmers and ranchers, and they call up and they want me to come out. How does that work on this? Okay, how do I go out to the ranch about, do I send it in as a pre-trip and then I don't know if I got approval and head out there, or what do you do?
So that's a piece that we're looking to work with Concur and still be able to, okay, yeah. I'll repeat the question for the live stream. The question is, with some of your work, you have to go out to farmers on a day-to-day basis and wondering about whether pre-trip approval is required or how it would work. And so with that, we're working with Concur to make sure we can still try to allow those blanket travel authorizations. And so most likely, I assume you're using those at this point.
Well, currently, we don't have to get pre-trip approval unless we go out of state.
Yep, and that would be your blanket travel, is covering your in-state travel. So that's the piece that we're working with them. If that is not available and we don't know that yet, we're going to work to make it as efficient as possible for those specific instances, especially with the extension offices and research.
Are we going to be able to just give pictures of our receipts then from now on?
Yes.
Have to turn in all those receipts?
Yep. Yeah, you will no longer need to keep the receipts as long as you take a picture and it's uploaded to Concur system that meets the needs that we have. So
So my understanding from the video is that the traveler themselves can go in and submit all their receipts. So I guess twofold question, does that eliminate the traveler coordinator role? And then two, what happens if your traveler does not submit and upload the receipts themselves?
yeah, so the biggest piece with that is we are not requiring that the traveler book their own, but we are encouraging. So there will still be the need for, in certain instances, when the travel coordinators are there to assist, but we are going to allow employees to book their own travel if they need to. If they do not upload the expenses with their receipts, there's still the ability, if you don't want to use a smartphone, to simply scan those into the Concur system. So that's a way, if they bring them back after their entire trip, they can upload it that way. But our goal is to encourage them to be as self-sufficient as possible.
What if the receipt is in a different language?
Yep, and so receipts, so the question was receipts with different languages and how those would be submitted. Those will just be like they are today. We would need a translation of those on the receipt, the business, what's included on that receipt. Concur is able to convert the currency. As long as you type in the foreign currency, it'll convert that for you automatically with that day's transaction fees and such. So.
My question is about booking air, the lowest available coach fare at the time. What if the lowest available coach fare involves 2 stops before the destination?
Mhm.
And that's just really not effective for a lot of our travelers.
Do you want to touch on that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so as it is today, there will be some room for you to explain. So we're requiring lowest fare when practical, but this does come up quite a bit where, you have 20 hours of travel versus 5. So there will be a way within the system for you to explain why you did not pick the lowest fare. And as long as that's a valid reason that you can back up with some evidence or show why you picked that, then yes, we will allow that as yep. Yeah, go ahead.
I have a second question.
Sure.
About the policy with the per diem and the hotel, allowing 50% above what the posted rate is for that town. Does that include just the base rate or the occupancy fees and taxes on top of it?
Do you know that one? Okay.
So that per diem rate is based off the base that they provide. I guess I'll repeat that for the live stream again. But the question was, the per diem plus 50%, is that the base rate, or does that include occupancy tax and any other fees that may be part of that? That is the piece that's listed when you search a hotel with no taxes or fees included.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we've talked about this in terms of pretty much conference-type travel. What about field research? So, a lot of times they have to take their gear with them. They're going to have to drive maybe over 500 miles, which I think was your limit for flying. I mean, how do we handle those sorts of travel?
Yeah, so the question was, if we have researchers going out and needing to travel further than 500 miles, not requiring them to use air because of the gear they have to take with them. That's one of those circumstances where we would allow the personal vehicle travel, would be one of the exemptions to the rule in that case. And again, this policy was written in mind with a standard business traveler. Research is definitely an area that we recognize that we need a little more input and have been receiving that across the campuses. And so that's a piece that we do need to tweak and reword and adjust a little bit. So that's the feedback that we really appreciate that we can help to implement into this to make it work.
I would just add that blanket is going to be huge for those of us that work in offices where we travel constantly. Having to do a pre-trip basically weekly or daily will be a real problem.
Yep. And so the comment was to make sure that the blanket travel is still enacted. And again, that's a piece that we have included in the policy because we know it's important. And again, we're working with Concur to make sure we can utilize that. And if we can't, we're trying to figure out a way to make it as easy as possible. So,
Thank you.
yep.
Are we limited to the number of questions we can ask?
Nope.
Just time.
I think I did. If the hotel you're booking, the online posts that continental breakfast is included, and the traveler chooses not to eat the continental breakfast, is that allowed? Or if it's a business breakfast, where, you get paid for breakfast because it's a business meeting? Explain a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so the question was if a hotel provides a continental breakfast and the employee chooses not to choose to eat there because of a business reason or others. One of the biggest pieces with that is from a business aspect, if there's a business meeting that may need to take over that breakfast, then that would be allowed. The only pieces that we want to restrict is if there's no dietary restriction, ADA compliant piece, that those exemptions aren't allowed. So if that traveler chose to do so because of a business meeting with a business purpose, that would be allowed. But if there's any other reason that they just didn't want to eat that food, then that would be one where it'd still be deducted off that per diem rate for the day. Okay.
Taking a picture of the receipt for the phone is going to include the tip, shows the bottom line for the meal. Many times I have to recalculate the tip because it's over 20%. How do you handle that with the concur system?
Yep. So the question was, when a receipt's submitted and it's over 20% initially, as of now, we have to adjust that rate, how that will be handled. So one of the pieces with the concur system is we are automating and making a lot of things easier, but we also want to emphasize that not all auditing has gone away. So there'll still be that check and balance system that we have to have with receipts like that we have to skim over and look at. So that'll still be required, and you'll still probably have to adjust a few of those things within the concur system when those expenses are uploaded. But there's just other pieces we've made easier to hopefully help with that process.
I would like to go back to the breakfasts. There are people with dietary restrictions, and I didn't quite understand what you said about people with dietary restrictions.
Mm-hmm.
And what is offered in some of those breakfasts is not what those people can eat.
Yep.
So what do you do with that?
Yeah. So the question was back to the dietary restrictions on the breakfast and how we would handle those. And so again, with dietary restrictions, if what's offered does not meet those needs, then the breakfast would not be deducted from the day. But again, one of the biggest things is we're trying to limit the exemptions to the policy, whether it's, we want to stick to the straight dietary restrictions or ADA compliance. Those personal preferences or the personal accommodations for other reasons, those are the things we want to eliminate.
And it would have to be on file before you travel.
Yep, and that would have to be on file before traveling happens, so.
So the feature where you can directly bill from your credit card, that's really good. But I'm wondering what level of personal details should I give into the system? And second, how do I choose which expenses goes into that and what other expenses that I use for personal reasons do not go into the system?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the question was when you have a personal credit card that uploads to the system with those expenses while you're traveling. So one capability of Concur is you are able to link one of your personal credit cards if you want to the system, and that system will automatically upload any receipts that take place during those travel dates. And so one of the pieces there too is that it may upload all those receipts, but just as easily as it uploads, you're able to delete those receipts that may be personal expenses.
Also, is that an app or it's just like?
Yes, it is an app. Yep.
Question on your meal travel policy. It says you can submit 3 receipts per day for 3 meals. But that is making the assumption that you're pretty much traveling to a restaurant and eating your full meal. Many of the conferences that we go to, regional conferences, they set up food courts or there might be food trucks where you're not likely going to be eating at a single restaurant, but yet that would give you too many receipts. How do we handle that?
You can handle that.
Yeah. So the question was if you're at a conference or somewhere where it's not a restaurant, but maybe like a traveling, you eat at 3 or 4 different food trucks for lunch, is that?
Yeah, so you might get your entree here, your drink here, you get your coconut, Pepsi, and then you have a dessert. There you got three receipts, but you're
Sure.
only allowing in the policy 1 receipt.
That's correct. So the 3 receipts is a new Nebraska law. So that's something that we'll have to look at. Maybe in a situation like that where you don't have a receipt for every meal, that you could submit something after the fact that you create your own receipt. That's something that I think we'll need to talk to the Concur people about and how we can, if it's a single meal and you can show that you ate them all for lunch, how we would maybe combine those into one. That's something that I think we'll need to look at, but it's a good point. So thank you for raising that. Yeah.
Yeah, this is just a general question actually. Regarding the end of travel date, how do you define this end of travel date? For example, suppose a faculty attend a conference in India, and the conference is on May 20th to 25th. He spends the rest of summertime in India, come back on 15th of August. What is his end of travel date?
So the question is, if you go on a business trip and then extend your trip, maybe for a personal reason, what's the last day of travel? And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but it would be that last day that you're business traveling. Are you talking about like for when the 60-day time period starts?
I think because of 60 days, if it's 60 days, then he cannot apply for any reimbursement because of the 60-day limit.
Yep.
Otherwise, this limit should be extended to 120 days
Yep, so,
whose country of origin is out of US,
yep.
and they usually go on international travel, and so that will contribute to some.
So we're hoping that this new system will solve that because the uploads are so quick and almost immediate that you could submit those and send those off.
Is it certain that the end of travel date is 25th of May, like in this example?
Yes,
He
so,
comes back when he's filing this pre-trip approval form,
mhm.
and he says that he'll be returning on 15th of August. And then he comes to know that, and that was approved.
Mhm.
That means the end of travel date is 15th of August.
Yeah, that's something I might need to look at a little bit more. Just on the face of it, if you're ending business travel on a certain date, that likely starts the time for that 60-day, and that is a Nebraska accounting rule. So that's not anything that the University of Nebraska can do to change. So we're hoping with the Concur system, no matter where you are, as long as you can upload that receipt, you're done on, I think you said the 25th of May.
Considering the state, that is fine for
Mhm.
state travel, for state employees.
Mhm.
This rule looks okay. But for a university like this, where there's an international factor attached to the university, then this, limit probably needed to be modified.
Sure. Could you do me a favor and send that in to that email address so that we can take a look at that in a little more detail? That would be helpful. The travel@nebraska.edu. Yep, that's where we're taking things that we'll need to look at a little bit longer and as a committee. So if you would do that, that would be great. Thank you. Yeah.
In the policy, it talks about how the receipts for meals should only include like that individual's meal.
Correct.
I know in the past there's been receipts where like we eat together and then when I take it back, we break it out. So what happens if you do go out to a restaurant and if they only provide you one receipt for both of us?
Yep. So the question is if two university business travelers are on the same receipt, and this has come up at each campus, and it's something that we're looking at. So our goal, and we're encouraging people to get in the habit of getting their own receipt. We realize, in some international countries, they don't do that. Even domestically, like DC, won't split receipts. So this portion is going to be reworded based on the feedback we've gotten, but we're encouraging everyone to have their own receipt for the ease of the system, for the ease of reimbursement, but there will be ways that we can break those out within the system as well. So, yeah.
Another question on your meals and in your travel policy.
Mhm.
I think everybody knows and understands alcohol is not an allowed expense.
Right.
But handling that on the receipts, the policy contradicts itself. On one page it says alcohol just needs to be deducted from the receipt, and another place in the policy it says nothing that's not allowed reimbursement may be on the receipt. So which way is it?
Yep. So part of this is us encouraging people to try to break out receipts. However, the Concur system should be able to, they've told us that it can, if it's coded on the receipt as alcohol, that system can spot that and take those out. Now, some things where maybe it's in a different language or, it's some drink that you can't really tell it's alcohol, that will need to be addressed later. And there's a way that you should be able to do that within the system. But really, this goes back to us encouraging people to take off charges that we can't reimburse. But there will be ways to address that. So that is a portion of the policy that will need to be reworded. So, thanks. Yeah.
So our discussion so far has focused on faculty and staff
Mhm.
travel. And I know at all campuses, we have graduate student travel and undergraduate student travel. Are they going to get trained on the Concur system? Are we going to be their proxy to upload this? Or, because we have group travel cards if we are traveling with students. We put group meals on there, things like that. So how is this all going to translate to students?
Yeah, for students, the question was, how is this policy going to translate for graduate students or undergrad students who are researching as well? It'll all depend on how they're being treated. If they're a grad student that are traveling as an employee, they would be subject to the policy. If they're traveling as a student, they would still follow the current UNK student travel policy. So the student travel piece is very, very different among the campuses. So that's a piece that we have not touched and tried to conform to one university policy because there's a lot of different processes that go along with that. So. Yep, so the question is, right now we have direct billing allowed. Will that still be around, or is it encouraged to go through the website? I would say both, because with our new system, our goal is to have the university to pay for every booking that you do within Concur, so there'll be no calling to the hotel. You'll still be able to get that paid by the university without having to call them to direct bill. So that'll be uploaded automatically once it's booked to your expense report as well. So.
What happens if I make a purchase that does not offer a receipt?
So the question is, if you make a purchase that does not offer a receipt, it depends on the expense type as well as the amount. So within the policy, you can see there are certain receipt requirements. For certain things, it's over $5, such as meals. For other, it's over $25, the receipts are required. So if it's within those parameters of being allowed, then it would still be allowed in this system. You would just enter it at the end of your trip as a different expense. But if it doesn't comply with the receipt requirements in the policy, then it still wouldn't be reimbursed. So.
Two clarifications on things you mentioned. The first is with the per diem. Is the system checking your meal per diem on a daily basis or accumulative for the conference? It's been a typical practice that, with our system now, as long as you stay under your total for the trip, you're fine. Because typically what you might do is eat very cheaply for a couple of days so that you can go to a nice restaurant on one night. But if you're checking on a daily per diem, that's not going to be possible anymore.
Yeah, so the question was, are the per diem rates being monitored on a daily basis or an overall trip average? And so that is something that's still being discussed because it's been brought up at every campus. Right now, every campus they've been treated differently. A few of them will go on the daily basis, and others are going off of the average. So that's something that as a committee we still need to work out of how that's going to be handled, as well as how it will fall into Concur's capabilities. So.
And the second clarification was on you mentioned conference hotel rates where you need to book them through the conference site, so that's universally going to be acceptable and not through Concur, and if so, how do we handle that?
Yep, so the question was booking of conferences and their hotel rates outside of the system and whether that's still going to be allowed. And that will be allowed. The biggest thing with that for the safety piece with Concur is that we just encourage those receipts from that booking to be uploaded right away. That allows the itinerary to be put in so we can keep track of where employees are during safety issues and concerns. But yeah, that still is allowed because we realize that Travel and Transport is not able to book a lot of those conference rates. There's a few that we're going to be able to link to the system so that the employee doesn't have to cover that personally or have to use a P card in certain instances. But that is a piece that we're not regulating at this point because there's no better way to get the conference rate and save money that way. So.
Are traveling expenses still going to show up on SAP cost center reports? Or is there some kind of reporting in Concur that you'll have to look at to see the expenses that have been incurred?
The question is will the receipts, or not receipts, but the transactions, the meals, lodging, will those expenses end up in SAP in their cost object and on particular GL accounts? And yes, everything that'll go through Concur will end up flowing into SAP.
Will this system also be used for those one-day travels or the travels where there's really no expense, it just might be the cost of like a motor pool or a personal vehicle?
Yeah, and so the question is, on one-day travel or where there's no expenses, will this still be required? The answer to that first part is whether it's still required to put those trips in is yes. That's one of those tracking tools as well as supervisor approval to make sure you can go. But I would say the motor pool, we would still consider that an expense, but it's more of a paid internally. So it's still money coming out of one cost object into another. And so we want to make sure we account for that for budget reasons. Yeah, so that's how we would still require those pieces. And no expense as well. That's just more of the monitoring side to make sure we keep track of all our employees. So
So can I follow up on that? Does that go through Concur then,
like, would I have to go to Lincoln, because everybody meets in Lincoln and nobody comes out here? Right, so I have to do that through Concur?
Yeah, so the question is whether that would still be required for trips to Lincoln or things like that on a one-day basis. And yeah, that trip would still go through Concur.
Okay.
Yep, and so the other one too is with, I didn't answer the full question with the personal travel with the personal vehicle. So that still would be required as well since mileage is included. One of the features with Concur is it automatically does the mileage report, so you don't need to enter that as well. So.
Conference registrations, how are those handled through Concur?
So the question is how are conference registrations handled through Concur? They would be paid for and handled in the same manner as they are today. You would just upload that receipt to your specific trip. We're actually looking at linking the P cards so that any trip or any conference that is booked will automatically upload to that employee's database so they have it available.
How's this going to affect the current policy with the airfare situation reports that they find on Travelocity or wherever a cheaper flight?
So the question was if you can find cheaper airfare somewhere else, is that? So Travel and Transport, just to give you, I don't know how much you guys know about, they're one of the nation's leading travel agencies. So they currently have a contract with the university, and we're in the middle of that contract as our exclusive provider. The thing with Travel and Transport, Travelocity, and Orbitz, wherever you find airfare, they are all required to have the same inventory. They're required to have the same seats at the same prices, and there are actually outside auditors that confirm that they are in compliance with providing the same price. So, you know, a lot of times we hear, well, I went to Travelocity and found $100 cheaper than I was able to find through Travel and Transport. Likely what happened were the search parameters were different, so those flights were coming up differently, or it was an airfare where we didn't take into account the baggage fees and the, you know, some of the other airline fees that you don't realize until you've actually booked that trip. So all airfare will be required to go through Travel and Transport through the Concur system. And really, we're going to see some savings throughout that when all is said and done, because they are required to have the same inventory at the same prices. Yeah.
Will Travel and Transport be including Southwest Airlines as part of the options to travel?
Yep, so the question is if Southwest is still an option, and yes, as of right now it is. The Swabas will still be available. We're hoping. It is right now, so, yeah.
And if a person chooses to travel locally out of Grand Island, which is a higher price than what, quite a bit higher price sometimes, than what you would find in Lincoln or Omaha. But once you add car travel, once you add an overnight a lot of times because it's an early flight or a late flight, I'm assuming that'll still be allowed.
Yeah, so the question is a different airport that may be a savings overall even though the ticket price is higher. And that's something that's probably still going to be handled at your department level with the pre-trip approvals. And that's something that you can go through and show, like an outside audit, that really it was a less expensive option. So there's still going to be some flexibility there with how you travel. Yeah.
You may have touched on this. We have staff that recruit across the state of Nebraska. So they may do their pre-trip approval, say, well, I want to spend the night in, say, Scottsbluff. They get done early, and all of a sudden, hey, I can make it up to Shatter, and maybe keep ahead of things. What happens in that situation? That they had a reservation somewhere, and now they're in another town?
Yeah, so the question is if you have a reservation in a certain area and maybe you're ahead of schedule or behind schedule and you need to rebook that. The capabilities to go in through Concur and change that are still there. So you'll be able to update your hotel or your where you're staying, kind of like you are able to do so now. Is that? Oh yeah, and if it's athletic recruiting, that will be handled just a little bit differently.
Okay, well, we definitely need to talk.
We're on it.
Thank you.
Yes. Well, man, you guys are right on time today. So we'll be up here if anybody has any additional questions that they'd like to talk to us about. Please submit your feedback to the email address and we will take a look at it. Thank you for coming out today.